Have you ever noticed that the more you explain yourself, the more toxic people seem to challenge you? The more you try to prove your kindness, the more they test your limits. They are not looking for peace, they are looking for access. But there is one simple shift, one decision you make only once that changes everything. It doesn't require revenge, it doesn't require arguments, it doesn't require becoming cold-hearted. It simply makes you someone they can no longer control. Today, I want to share that shift with you because once you understand it, toxic people will slowly disappear from your life, not because you forced them to leave, but because they can no longer feed on your energy. There is a quiet truth that many people spend years trying to avoid. The people who manipulate, criticize, or emotionally drain you are rarely searching for someone stronger than themselves. They are searching for someone who still depends on their approval. Think carefully about this. Why does a toxic person become frustrated when you stop reacting? Why do they become louder when you begin to grow? It is because they can feel that their influence is slipping away. They are not afraid of your anger. They are afraid of your independence. Many people believe the answer is to become tougher, louder, or more aggressive. They think they must always have the perfect response, prove their point, or defend every decision they make. But every explanation is often another invitation for someone else to judge you. When you constantly seek permission to be yourself, you quietly hand over the authority for your happiness. Without realizing it, you tell the world, "My peace depends on what you think of me." This is where suffering begins. From childhood, many of us are taught to earn love through performance. We learn that good behavior deserves praise, success earns respect, and pleasing others brings acceptance. These lessons may seem harmless, but if they remain unexamined, they follow us into adulthood. Suddenly, every criticism feels like a personal attack. Every rejection feels like proof that we are not enough. Every disagreement becomes something we desperately try to fix. Toxic people recognize this immediately. They do not need to know your deepest secrets. They only need to discover what you fear losing. If you fear losing approval, they will threaten it. If you fear disappointing others, they will use guilt. If you fear conflict, they will create just enough tension to make you surrender your boundaries. Notice how simple their strategy is. They are not controlling your life directly. They are controlling your reactions. The greatest freedom comes when you understand that your value existed long before anyone praised you. It remains even when someone misunderstands you. It remains even when someone walks away. Your worth is not a reward handed to you by the opinions of other people. It is something that already exists within you, waiting to be recognized. Imagine carrying a cup filled with clean water. Every time someone insults you, you panic and hand them the cup. They pour dirt into it and then you spend hours trying to clean it again. But one day you realize something important. The cup never belonged to them. You stop handing it over. Their words may still exist, but they no longer contaminate what you protect. This is not arrogance. It is not believing you are better than others. True confidence is remarkably quiet. It does not demand applause. It does not seek constant reassurance. It simply knows where it stands. When someone disagrees with you, listen without becoming smaller. When someone criticizes you unfairly, examine yourself honestly, but do not surrender your identity. Learn from truth, release what is false, and continue walking your path without carrying unnecessary weight. There will always be people who misunderstand your silence, question your choices, or dislike the direction your life is taking. Let them. Not every opinion deserves a place inside your mind. The moment you stop asking everyone for permission to become who you are meant to be, something extraordinary happens. You become emotionally unavailable to manipulation. And that is where true freedom begins. Once you stop seeking approval from everyone around you, something else naturally begins to change. You start to understand that peace is not protected by convincing people to respect you. Peace is protected by deciding who has access to your time, your energy, and your attention. This is where many people make a mistake. They believe boundaries must be loud. They imagine strength as raising their voice, making dramatic announcements, or warning others not to cross a line. But true strength is much quieter than that. A mountain does not announce that it cannot be moved. The ocean does not argue with the wind. They simply remain what they are. In the same way, a person with inner strength does not spend every day explaining their limits. They simply live by them. Toxic people often test you in small ways before they challenge you in larger ones. They interrupt your peace with unnecessary criticism. They ask for favors without gratitude. They expect immediate replies, constant availability, or endless emotional support while giving very little in return. At first, these moments seem insignificant. You tell yourself, it's easier to ignore it, or I don't want to create conflict. But every time you ignore your own discomfort to keep someone else comfortable, you quietly teach them that your boundaries are negotiable. People learn how to treat you by watching what you consistently allow. They pay less attention to your words than to your actions. You can say, please don't speak to me that way. But if you remain in the conversation every time they disrespect you, your actions send a different message. Your silence in those moments becomes permission. This is why boundaries are not about changing other people. They are about changing your response. You cannot force someone to become respectful, honest, or kind. But you can decide that disrespect no longer earns your attention. You can decide that manipulation no longer receives an explanation. You can decide that repeated negativity no longer has a seat at your table. Boyer. Many people fear that setting boundaries will make them seem cold or selfish. In reality, healthy boundaries are one of the purest forms of compassion. Why? Because they protect both people from creating deeper resentment. When you constantly say yes while secretly wishing you had said no, kindness slowly turns into bitterness. You begin blaming others for taking what you freely offered. That is not peace. That is exhaustion disguised as generosity. There is also wisdom in learning to say less. Not every decision requires an explanation. Not every criticism deserves a defense. Some people ask questions not because they seek understanding, but because they seek control. They hope that if they keep you explaining yourself, they can keep you doubting yourself. The more you speak, the more opportunities they have to twist your words. Sometimes a simple, calm response is enough. Sometimes no response at all is the strongest answer. Walking away is also a boundary. It does not always mean leaving a relationship forever. Sometimes it means ending a conversation before it becomes destructive. Sometimes it means refusing to participate in gossip. Sometimes it means protecting your attention instead of proving your point. Walking away is not weakness when it is guided by wisdom. It is the recognition that your energy is too valuable to be spent on battles that lead nowhere. Notice how toxic people react when they discover that you are no longer easily available. At first, they may become louder. They may accuse you of changing. They may call you distant or difficult because the version of you they preferred was the one that never said no. Do not be discouraged by this. Resistance often appears the moment unhealthy patterns begin to break. The people who truly care about you will learn to respect your boundaries because they value your well-being as much as their own. Those who only valued your usefulness may slowly drift away. Let them. You are not losing something valuable. You are making room for relationships built on mutual respect instead of silent sacrifice. Real strength is not found in building walls around your heart. It is found in quietly deciding who is allowed to enter and under what conditions. That single choice protects your peace far better than any argument ever could. Once your boundaries become stronger, another transformation begins to take place within you. You no longer feel the need to carry every emotion that enters the room. You begin to realize that not every storm belongs to you. This is one of the greatest forms of inner freedom, yet it is often misunderstood. Many people hear the word detachment and immediately imagine becoming cold, distant, or uncaring. They believe it means closing the heart. But true detachment has nothing to do with the absence of love. It is the presence of wisdom. There is a difference between caring about someone and carrying them. Caring means you wish them well. Carrying means you make their problems your identity. Toxic people often depend on this confusion. They want you to believe that if you truly care, you must absorb their anger, fix their mistakes, tolerate their disrespect, or rescue them from every consequence of their actions. Over time, you become exhausted, not because you love too much, but because you have forgotten where another person's responsibility ends and your own begins. Imagine standing beside a river after heavy rain. The water is rushing with incredible force. If you step into the current believing you can stop it with your hands, you will only be swept away. But if you stand firmly on the bank, you can observe the river without becoming part of it. The river continues to flow, yet you remain steady. This is emotional detachment. It is not ignoring reality. It is refusing to drown in someone else's chaos. Think about how often people lose their peace because they react instantly. One harsh comment ruins an entire day. One unfair opinion echoes in the mind for weeks. One person's bad mood spreads through an entire family or workplace. Why does this happen? Because emotions are contagious when we lack awareness. We unconsciously absorb the energy around us until we forget which feelings are actually ours. The practice of inner stillness teaches something different. Before reacting, pause. Observe what is happening inside you. Ask yourself, is this emotion truly mine, or have I simply picked it up from someone else? That single moment of awareness creates distance between the event and your response. In that space, you reclaim your freedom. This does not mean you become indifferent to suffering. Compassion remains, but it becomes healthier. You can listen without losing yourself. You can support without sacrificing your peace. You can offer kindness without allowing manipulation. In fact, your compassion becomes more genuine because it is no longer fueled by guilt or fear. It comes from choice rather than obligation. There will always be people who try to pull you into unnecessary arguments. They may criticize your character, question your intentions, or provoke you with words designed to create emotional reactions. They understand that if they can control your emotions, they can often control your decisions. But when you learn to remain calm, something remarkable happens. Their words lose their power. They expected a fire, but they found a lake. They expected resistance, but they encountered presence. So remember, calmness is not weakness. It is disciplined strength. Anyone can react in anger. Anyone can shout when they feel threatened. But remaining centered while emotions rise around you requires tremendous inner mastery. It is the result of training the mind instead of obeying it. There is another beautiful truth about detachment. It frees you from the impossible task of changing people. Many spend years trying to convince toxic individuals to become different. They explain, argue, plead, and hope that one more conversation will finally create understanding. Sometimes people do change, but only when they choose to. Your effort alone cannot transform a heart that refuses to look inward. When you accept this, a heavy burden falls from your shoulders. You stop measuring your success by whether someone else becomes kinder. Instead, you measure it by whether you remain peaceful regardless of their choices. That is a victory no one can take from you. You can love people without allowing them to disturb your inner world. You can forgive without giving repeated access to those who continually harm you. You can wish someone healing while recognizing that their journey is not yours to walk. The moment you stop carrying what was never yours to carry, your heart becomes lighter, your mind becomes clearer, and your peace becomes untouchable. When you no longer seek approval, when your boundaries are firm, and when you have learned to detach from the emotional storms of others, you begin to discover another form of strength that very few people truly understand. It is the strength of silence, not the silence of fear, not the silence of suppression, but the silence that comes from complete inner certainty. There is a profound difference between having nothing to say and having nothing that needs to be said. Many people believe they must always defend themselves. If someone misunderstands them, they rush to explain. If someone spreads gossip, they rush to correct every rumor. If someone insults them, they search for the perfect response that will finally prove their worth. But pause for a moment and ask yourself this question: how many arguments have actually changed someone's heart? How many long explanations have truly convinced a person who had already decided not to understand you? Often the answer is very few. Toxic people rarely argue because they are searching for truth. They argue because they are searching for control. Every time you become emotionally involved, every time you try to justify yourself, every time you desperately fight for the final word, you unknowingly give them exactly what they wanted: your attention. Attention is their reward. Your emotional reaction is the proof that they still have access to your inner world. Imagine throwing a stone into a calm lake. The water ripples for a moment, but eventually it becomes still again. Now imagine throwing that same stone into a raging river. The current carries everything away in chaos. Your mind can become either the lake or the river. If every opinion disturbs you, your peace will always depend on the behavior of others. But when your mind becomes like the still lake, disturbances lose their ability to define your day. Silence is powerful because it interrupts the cycle of manipulation. A person expecting an argument becomes confused when they receive calmness instead. Someone waiting for anger suddenly has nothing to fight against. It is like trying to ignite a fire where there is no dry wood. Without your emotional fuel, the conflict slowly burns itself out. This does not mean you never speak. Wisdom knows when words are necessary and when they are simply noise. There are moments when truth must be spoken with courage. There are times when injustice requires a clear voice. But even then, your words should come from clarity, not from wounded pride. Speak because it is useful, not because your ego is demanding to be heard. Notice how nature teaches this lesson without speaking at all. The rising sun does not announce its arrival. The tallest trees do not compete with the grass beneath them. The moon does not argue with the darkness. Their presence is enough. Real strength often requires fewer words than we imagine. There is another reason silence is so effective. It gives you time to observe, time to think, time to see people as they truly are. When you react immediately, you often respond to emotion instead of reality. But when you remain silent for a moment, patterns begin to reveal themselves. You notice whether someone is genuinely seeking understanding or simply looking for another opportunity to provoke you. You begin to recognize that not every invitation deserves your acceptance. Some people become uncomfortable when you stop explaining yourself. They were accustomed to having access to every thought in your mind. They expected immediate answers, endless justifications, and emotional reactions they could predict. Your silence removes that certainty. It creates space between their expectations and your response. In that space, your freedom grows. Do not confuse silence with avoidance. Avoidance comes from fear. Purposeful silence comes from confidence. One hides because it feels powerless. The other remains quiet because it no longer feels the need to prove anything. This kind of silence carries dignity. It communicates self-respect without demanding recognition. There is a quiet confidence that develops when you realize your character does not need constant defense. People who truly know you will recognize your integrity through your actions, not through endless explanations. Those determined to misunderstand you would not be convinced even if you spoke for hours. Why exhaust yourself trying to open eyes that have chosen to remain closed? Sometimes the most powerful sentence you will ever speak is the one you choose not to say. Sometimes the greatest victory is refusing to participate in a battle that was never meant to bring peace. Your energy is precious. Your attention is valuable. Guard both carefully. Because the person who has mastered silence can no longer be controlled by noise. Once you discover the strength of silence, you begin to notice something even more important. Silence is not the final goal. It is the space that allows you to direct your energy towards something meaningful. Many people spend so much of their lives reacting to difficult people that they forget to build a life worth protecting. They wake up thinking about yesterday's argument, replay conversations in their minds, imagine future confrontations, and slowly allow toxic individuals to occupy more of their thoughts than their own dreams. In this way, those people continue to control them even from a distance. Ask yourself this: where does your attention go every day? Because wherever your attention goes, your life follows. If your mind constantly circles around resentment, disappointment, and conflict, those things become your world. But if your attention is invested in growth, learning, discipline, and purpose, something remarkable happens. The influence of negativity begins to shrink. It does not disappear because the world has changed. It disappears because you have stopped feeding it with your energy. Many believe that freedom comes from removing every toxic person from their lives. While that can sometimes be necessary, there is a deeper freedom. It is reaching a point where your purpose is so clear that distractions no longer have the power to pull you away. Think of an archer aiming at a distant target. If he keeps turning his head every time someone in the crowd shouts, he will never hit the mark. The problem is not the noise around him. The problem is allowing the noise to become more important than the target. Your life works the same way. Every morning, you are given a limited amount of attention. That attention is your greatest wealth. Once you spend it, you cannot get it back. Toxic people understand this, even if they never say it aloud. They know that if they can occupy your thoughts, they can drain your strength without ever touching you. This is why some people leave a conversation feeling exhausted. It was not the words themselves that caused the fatigue. It was the hours of mental replay that followed. Discipline becomes your shield. Discipline is often misunderstood as forcing yourself to work harder, but true discipline is much broader than that. It is the ability to choose what deserves your focus and to let go of everything that does not. It is waking up and asking, what kind of person am I becoming today? Instead of asking, who upset me yesterday? One question builds your future, the other traps you in your past. Iwanti purpose also transforms the way you see obstacles. When your life has no clear direction, every criticism feels enormous because it becomes the center of your attention. But when you are deeply committed to something meaningful, criticism often becomes background noise. The mountain climber does not stop halfway to argue with every voice calling from the valley below. His eyes remain fixed on the summit because he understands that reaching the top matters more than winning every debate. There is another beautiful truth about purpose. It naturally changes the people around you. Some will be inspired by your consistency. Others will quietly distance themselves because they can no longer distract you. Do not chase either outcome. Continue walking your path. Your responsibility is not to manage everyone's opinion. Your responsibility is to remain faithful to the life you are creating. This requires patience. Progress is rarely dramatic. It is built through ordinary days filled with ordinary choices. Reading instead of complaining, exercising instead of arguing, resting instead of seeking revenge, learning instead of gossiping. These small decisions seem insignificant in the moment, yet they shape your character more powerfully than any single life-changing event. Imagine planting a tree. During the first weeks, there is little to admire. The growth is hidden beneath the soil as the roots spread deeper into the earth. Someone looking only at the surface might believe nothing is happening. But the tree is preparing itself to withstand future storms. Your daily discipline works the same way. Every quiet act of self-improvement strengthens roots that no one else can see. Then one day, when difficulties arrive, you remain standing while others are blown in every direction. Do not measure your success by how many toxic people you defeated. Measure it by how little space they occupy in your mind. The greatest victory is not proving them wrong. It is becoming so committed to your purpose that their negativity no longer has the power to interrupt your peace. When your life is filled with meaning, distractions lose their invitation and toxic people slowly become nothing more than passing shadows on the road ahead. As your purpose becomes stronger, you begin to understand one final lesson, perhaps the most difficult of them all. It is the lesson of letting go. Many people believe that strength is measured by how long they can endure, how much they can tolerate, or how many chances they can continue giving. They wear their suffering like a badge of honor. They convince themselves that if they just remain patient a little longer, explain themselves one more time, or sacrifice a little more of their peace, eventually the other person will change. Sometimes that happens, but often it does not. One of the greatest sources of unnecessary suffering is the belief that you are responsible for changing someone who has no desire to change. You can offer guidance, you can speak with honesty, and you can lead by example, but you cannot force another person to awaken. Growth is always a personal decision.